The auditorium was already buzzing when the laughter hit her like a slap. Not the warm kind, not the kind that lifts a room. This was sharp, cutting, cruel. Dreams? The teacher scoffed loudly, his voice amplified by the microphone clipped to his collar. You want to be an aerospace engineer? A wave of murmurs rolled through the packed high school auditorium, hundreds of students, parents seated in folding chairs, faculty lining the walls, a few phones lifted instinctively, recording. At the center of it all stood Amara Lewis, 19, slim, dark-skinned, hands trembling as she clutched a single sheet of paper. Her scholarship application, her future. Her voice caught in her throat as the spotlight burned her eyes. "Yes, sir," she said softly. "That's my goal." The teacher, Mr. Harold Whitman, head of the Academic Review Board, let out a short, mocking laugh and turned to the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, spreading his hands theatrically, "this is what happens when social media fills young people's heads with fantasies instead of realism." A few students snickered. Someone whispered, "That's embarrassing." Amara felt the heat rush to her face. Mr. Whitman didn't stop. "Let us be honest," he continued, his tone dripping with condescension. "Your grades are average. Your background," he glanced at her file with a sneer, "is challenging. And now you stand here telling us you want millions of dollars in donor funding to chase a dream that people like you rarely finish. People like you." The words hung in the air, ugly and unmistakable. Amara's chest tightened. She searched the crowd, faces blurred together, some curious, some uncomfortable, many silent. No one spoke, no one stood. I work 2 jobs," she tried, her voice cracking. "I help take care of my mother. I study every night." Mr. Whitman cut her off with a raised hand. "Please," he said sharply. "We've heard enough excuses. This scholarship is meant for exceptional candidates, not charity cases." A sharp inhale rippled through the room. Amara's eyes burned. Her fingers curled around the paper until it crumpled. On the front row, a parent shook her head slowly. A student raised his phone higher, zooming in. "This is humiliating," someone whispered, and still no one intervened. Mr. Whitman leaned closer, lowering his voice just enough to sound reasonable while remaining perfectly audible. "Do yourself a favor, Amara," he said. "Set realistic expectations. Community college, trade school, something more appropriate." The word appropriate landed like a punch. Her knees felt weak. She swallowed hard, forcing the words out. "Sir, my mentor encouraged me to apply." That made him laugh again, louder this time. "Your mentor," he echoed. "Who exactly is advising you?" "Someone from your neighborhood?" A few laughs broke out now, uncomfortable but real. Amara's lips trembled. She opened her mouth, then closed it. The name sat heavy on her tongue, too powerful, too unbelievable to say out loud. Before she could speak, Mr. Whitman straightened and addressed the audience once more. "This is why we must protect donor resources," he declared. "Because emotional stories don't build rockets. Discipline does, pedigree does." Amara stared down at the floor. A tear slipped free, splashing onto the polished wood beneath her shoes. The silence that followed was worse than the laughter, and that's when it happened. From the back of the auditorium, a tall figure slowly stood. At first, no one noticed. Then a ripple of awareness moved through the crowd, heads turning, whispers shifting direction. The man adjusted his tailored navy coat, his expression calm but unreadable. His silver hair caught the light as he stepped into the aisle, eyes fixed not on the teacher, but on Amara. She felt it before she saw him, that steady presence, that familiar calm. Her breath hitched because she recognized him, but Mr. Whitman didn't, not yet. Question of the day: have you ever seen someone judged unfairly because of where they came from or who people thought they were? Share your thoughts in the comments and tell us where you're watching from today. The man began walking forward, unhurried, confident, as if he owned the very air in the room. Mr. Whitman frowned, annoyed at the interruption. "Sir," he snapped, "this is a closed academic review. Please return to your seat." The man didn't stop. Amara's heart pounded because she knew something the room didn't, something that was about to change everything. The camera phones kept rolling. The crowd leaned in. The tension thickened, electric, and just as the man reached the edge of the stage, just before he spoke, the scene froze. Because to understand how a young woman ended up being humiliated in front of hundreds, to understand the quiet strength behind her shaking hands, and to understand why that man had risen from the crowd at that exact moment, we have to go back to how this story truly began this morning. The morning began long before the sun rose. Amara Lewis woke to the sound of coughing, deep, rattling coughs that echoed through the thin walls of their apartment. She didn't need to check the clock. Her body already knew the rhythm of worry. She swung her legs off the narrow bed and padded barefoot across the cold linoleum floor. The apartment was small, 2 rooms, peeling paint, a single window that faced a brick wall. But she moved through it with practiced quiet, like someone who had learned how not to disturb fragile things. "Mom," she whispered, pushing open the bedroom door. Her mother, Ruth Lewis, lay propped up on pillows, a thin blanket pulled tight around her shoulders. Her skin looked gray in the dim light, her eyes sunken with exhaustion. Another cough seized her, leaving her gasping until Amara rushed to her side with a glass of water. "Easy," Amara murmured, lifting her mother's head gently. "Slow sips." Ruth tried to smile. "You should be getting ready," she said hoarsely. "Big day." Amara nodded, though her chest tightened. "Yes, ma'am," she replied softly, "but you come first, always." She set the water down and checked the pill bottle on the nightstand, nearly empty, 2 pills left, 2. Her stomach knotted, Ruth noticed. Mothers always did. "Don't start worrying this early," she said. "God has a plan." Amara swallowed and forced a smile. "I know, he always does." She helped her mother sit up, adjusted the pillows, and brushed Ruth's thinning hair with gentle strokes. These small rituals were how Amara showed love, not with grand words, but with quiet care. After making sure her mother was settled, Amara moved to the kitchenette. She filled a pot with water, turned on the stove, and pulled out the last 2 eggs from the fridge. No milk, no bread, just eggs and half a bag of rice. She cooked anyway. When the food was ready, she divided it carefully, slightly more on her mother's plate, slightly less on her own. Ruth noticed, of course. "You're too skinny already," she said, frowning. "I ate at work last night," Amara lied easily. They both knew it wasn't true. After breakfast, Amara retreated to the bathroom to get ready. She stared at her reflection in the cracked mirror. 19 years old, dark brown eyes, hair pulled back into a neat bun. Her blazer, second-hand but clean, hung carefully on the back of the door. She touched the fabric like it was something sacred. Today mattered. She dressed slowly, smoothing wrinkles, checking every detail, not because she was vain, but because she knew how quickly people judged, especially people like her. Before leaving, she knelt by her mother's bedside and took Ruth's hand. "Today's the scholarship review," Amara said quietly. "I'll call you right after." Ruth squeezed her fingers weakly. "No matter what happens," she said, "I'm proud of you." Amara blinked hard. "I love you," she whispered. "I know." Outside, the neighborhood was waking up, sirens in the distance, a bus hissing to a stop, kids running past with backpacks and laughter. The buildings were old, their bricks cracked and stained, but there was life here. Struggle, yes, but also resilience. As Amara walked toward the bus stop, she passed Mrs. Jenkins from downstairs, who was sweeping the stoop. "Big day?" Mrs. Jenkins asked, smiling. "Yes, ma'am," Amara replied. "Go show them who you are," the woman said, tapping her broom like a blessing. Amara smiled back, heart lifting just a little. On the bus, she found a seat by the window and pulled her folder from her bag. Inside were transcripts, recommendation letters, and a single handwritten note folded neatly at the back. She hesitated, then opened it. "Amara, never let anyone convince you that your dreams are too big for the room you're standing in. You belong in every space your mind can reach." Her mentor, the man who had seen her potential long before anyone else did. She remembered the first time they met years ago at a community science workshop she almost didn't attend because she couldn't afford the bus fare. How he'd listened, how he'd asked real questions, how he'd treated her curiosity like something valuable. He never flaunted his wealth, never spoke about power. He just guided her. "Apply," he'd said gently when she doubted herself. "You've earned the right to be there." The bus lurched forward, pulling her back into the present. As the city shifted from worn-down streets to polished buildings, Amara felt the familiar tightening in her chest. She straightened her blazer, lifted her chin, and practiced breathing through the fear. This was her chance, not just for herself, but for her mother, for every late night. Every sacrifice, every moment she'd been told, directly or indirectly, to aim lower. She stepped off the bus in front of the prestigious school auditorium just as the morning sun finally broke through the clouds. The building loomed tall and imposing, glass and steel reflecting a world she was still fighting to enter. Amara paused at the bottom of the steps. She pressed her folder to her chest, whispered a quiet prayer, and began to climb, unaware that before the day was over, everything she believed about power, dignity, and justice would be tested, and everything would change. By the time Amara reached the auditorium doors, the weight on her chest had nothing to do with nerves. It was time, not symbolic time, not someday time, real, unforgiving time. Her phone vibrated in her hand just as she paused to push the doors open. "Mom." Amara's heart dropped. She stepped aside, answering quickly. "Hey, what's wrong?" Ruth's voice came through thin and strained, every word punctuated by shallow breaths. Baby, I didn't want to worry you, but the pain in my chest, it's worse today. Amara closed her eyes. Did you take your medication? She asked, though she already knew the answer. Yes, Ruth said, the last one. Silence stretched between them. How bad is it? Amara asked. Enough that I'm scared, Ruth admitted quietly. Amara leaned her forehead against the cold glass door. Okay, she said, forcing calm into her voice. Listen to me, I'm here at the school. I'll finish the review, then I'll come straight home. We'll figure something out, we always do. Ruth exhaled shakily. I'm sorry, she whispered. I hate that this keeps landing on you. Amara swallowed hard. You're my mother, this is where I belong. They hung up, but the call left her hands shaking. She knew the truth she hadn't said out loud. The prescription refill alone cost more than she made in a month. The clinic had already warned them, no medication, no stabilization. And the emergency room? That was a death sentence they would never escape. This scholarship wasn't just about school, it was about survival. Inside the auditorium, the review process began. Names were called, students stood. Applause followed polished presentations, confident voices, parents with proud smiles. Amara sat in the third row, counting her breaths. When her name was finally called, her legs felt like they might give out. Amara Lewis, the moderator announced. She stood. The lights were bright, too bright. She walked to the stage, heart pounding, and handed her folder to the panel. Mr. Whitman flipped through it with thinly veiled disinterest. State your goal, he said curtly. Aerospace engineering, Amara replied, with a focus on sustainable propulsion systems. That was when the room shifted. Eyebrows raised. Whispers began. Mr. Whitman looked up slowly, as if surprised she'd spoken English. And then came the questions. How do you plan to afford additional materials? Who's funding your preparatory programs? Why not choose something more practical? Each one felt less like curiosity and more like a challenge. Amara answered carefully, thoughtfully, honestly, but she could feel the tide turning. Then Mr. Whitman reached the final page of her file, her financial disclosure. He read it, paused, and smiled, not kindly. That's interesting, he said into the microphone. Your household income is considerably below the threshold. Amara nodded. Yes, sir. And your mother is unemployed due to illness? Yes. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Mr. Whitman leaned back in his chair. So let me get this straight. You're asking this institution and our donors to invest a significant amount of money into someone who may not even be able to finish the program due to personal circumstances. Amara's throat tightened. I will finish, she said quietly. I've never quit anything in my life, he chuckled. That's a bold claim, he replied, especially considering your background. The word hit harder this time. Amara's hands trembled. She thought of the pill bottle, the cough, the call. I don't have any other options, she said, her voice cracking despite her efforts. This scholarship could change everything, not just for me. The desperation slipped through. She knew it had, and she saw it in his eyes. He sensed weakness. This isn't a charity, Mr. Whitman said sharply. We don't fund sob stories. A few people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. No one spoke. Amara felt tears burn behind her eyes. She wasn't asking for pity. She was asking for a chance. But as the panel whispered among themselves, she realized something terrifying. They weren't deciding her future based on her ability. They'd already decided based on her circumstances. Mr. Whitman turned back to her, lips pressed thin. We'll discuss your application, he said dismissively. You may step down. Just like that, no encouragement, no acknowledgement, she walked back to her seat in a daze, heart pounding, ears ringing. As the next name was called, her phone vibrated again. Another message from her mother. The pain is worse. I don't think I can wait. Amara's vision blurred. She looked up at the stage, at the panel, the donors seated nearby, the exit doors at the back of the auditorium. A realization settled in her chest, heavy and unavoidable. Waiting politely wasn't an option anymore. If she didn't speak up, if she didn't ask directly for help, her mother might not make it. And so, with her heart in her throat and shame burning her skin, Amara made the most painful decision of her life. She stood, even knowing what it might cost her, even knowing the humiliation that could follow. Because when desperation has no escape, pride becomes a luxury you can't afford. Amara stepped out of the auditorium into the sharp midday air, her lungs burning as if she'd been holding her breath for hours. For a moment, she just stood there. The building loomed behind her, glass, steel, authority. Inside, decisions were being made in quiet voices by people who would never know her mother's name, never hear her cough in the middle of the night, never count pills like blessings. Her phone buzzed again. No new message. That was somehow worse. She pulled her blazer tighter around herself and started walking. The donor wing of the campus sat on the far side of the grounds, separated by manicured lawns and fountains that seemed to exist in a different world. Amara had only been there once before, escorted, careful, invisible. Now every step felt heavier than the last. As she walked, her mind spiraled. What am I even doing? They already decided. I don't belong there. Her shoes scuffed against the pavement. She straightened her shoulders anyway. Because underneath the fear, burning, relentless fear, there was something else. Hope, small, fragile, but alive. She thought of her mentor's words. You belong in every space your mind can reach. She thought of her mother's hands, worn and warm, squeezing hers, and she kept walking. The closer she got, the more intimidating everything became. Cars lined the drive, sleek, expensive, quiet. People in tailored suits moved with purpose, barely glancing her way. The building itself was pristine, its entrance framed by tall glass doors that reflected her image back at her. A young woman in a borrowed blazer, holding a worn folder, eyes full of worry. Amara stopped at the base of the steps. Her heart hammered so loudly she was sure someone could hear it. They'll laugh at you. They'll turn you away. They'll call security. She imagined herself being escorted out, whispered about, remembered only as another girl who didn't know her place. Her hands shook. Closed her eyes, please, she prayed silently, just one person to see me. When she opened her eyes, she climbed the steps. Inside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of polished wood and money. A receptionist looked up, her smile polite but guarded. Can I help you? She asked. Amara swallowed. I'm here for the donor review. I need to speak with someone urgently. The receptionist glanced at her clothes, then at the line behind her. Do you have an appointment? No, Amara admitted. But I was just in the auditorium. My name is Amara Lewis. Something flickered in the woman's expression, recognition, maybe uncertainty. I'll see what I can do, she said, already reaching for the phone. Amara waited, every second stretching painfully. Around her, conversations continued as if nothing was wrong. Laughter drifted from a nearby lounge. Someone clinked a coffee cup against a saucer. Life went on. The receptionist hung up. You'll need to wait, she said. Someone will come speak with you. Amara nodded and took a seat along the wall. She clasped her hands together, pressing them between her knees to keep them from shaking. Her phone felt like a weight in her pocket. She checked it again, still nothing. Minutes passed, then more. Each tick of the clock on the wall felt like a countdown. Her thoughts raced, worst-case scenarios piling one on top of another. What if her mother collapsed? What if the ambulance came? What if the bill crushed them completely? She wiped at her eyes, determined not to cry here. Footsteps approached. A man stopped in front of her, middle-aged, stiff posture, sharp eyes. Miss Lewis, he asked. Yes, she said, standing quickly. Follow me. He led her down a hallway lined with framed photos, donors shaking hands, groundbreaking ceremonies, smiling faces that represented power and generosity. Amara felt painfully out of place. They stopped outside a large conference room. You'll wait here, he said. The panel is still in session. She nodded. As he walked away, voices drifted from inside the room. Laughter, then sharp, unmistakable derision. Her stomach dropped. She recognized that voice, Mr. Whitman. She pressed her ear closer to the door without meaning to. These kids, he was saying. They come in here thinking passion is enough. It's almost insulting. Another voice laughed. And the Lewis girl? Someone asked. Oh, that one, Mr. Whitman replied. Completely unrealistic. I had to put her in her place. Amara's chest constricted. She backed away from the door, humiliation washing over her. So this was how they spoke when she wasn't in the room. Her courage wavered. I should leave, she thought, before it gets worse. She turned toward the exit and nearly collided with someone. Whoa, a calm voice said. Careful there. Amara looked up. The man stood tall, dressed simply but elegantly. Silver hair, kind eyes that seemed to look past her clothes, past her fear, straight to her. I'm sorry, she stammered. I wasn't watching where I was going. He smiled gently. You look like you're carrying the weight of the world, she laughed weakly. It feels like it. For a moment they just stood there. Something about him felt familiar, steady. Are you okay? He asked. Amara hesitated. This was a stranger, but then again, so was everyone else here. No, she admitted softly. But I'm trying to be. The man nodded slowly, as if he understood far more than she'd said. Sometimes, he replied, trying is exactly enough. Before she could respond, voices rose behind them. Mr. Whitman's voice, sharp, irritated. Miss Lewis, he snapped, stepping into the hallway. What are you doing here? I thought I dismissed you. The man beside her turned calmly toward the sound. Amara's heart began to race, because she suddenly realized this confrontation wasn't over. It was only beginning. Mr. Whitman stood in the hallway like a judge in his own courtroom, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. His face was the picture of smug superiority. And when he saw Amara standing beside the stranger, this calm, confident man, his expression twisted into something sharper, like he'd found a new target. What are you doing here? he demanded, voice loud enough to echo through the hallway. I told you to leave. Amara swallowed, forcing her voice to stay steady. Sir, my mother's sick. I need help. I'm asking for another chance. Whitman scoffed. Another chance? You had your chance. You didn't belong in that room. You don't belong here. The stranger beside her didn't move. He simply watched, his eyes steady, as if he could see everything and still choose patience. Amara's throat tightened. I belong wherever I work hard, she said quietly. I belong wherever I dream. Mr. Whitman's laughter burst out, sharp, cruel, and loud. Dreams, he repeated, as if the word itself was a joke. You can dream all you want, but this isn't a bedtime story. Hallway was empty except for them, but Amara could hear it. The soft shuffle of footsteps approaching, the sound of phones being raised. Someone was filming, someone was always filming. Mr. Whitman took a step closer, invading her space. Do you have any idea how much money we invest in these programs? He asked, his voice rising. Do you know what we expect? Excellence, results, not fantasies. Amara's eyes stung. She could feel the crowd gathering, people drawn by the drama like moths to a flame. She could see their faces in the reflection of the polished walls, curious, amused, indifferent. She took a breath. I'm not asking for a handout, she said. I'm asking for a chance, a real chance. Whitman's expression hardened. A chance? You want a chance? I'm giving you a reality check. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so the cameras could still capture every word. You think because you're black and you've had it hard that we should feel sorry for you? That we should let you into our world because you deserve it? The word deserve hit her like a slap. Amara's eyes widened. Sir, do sir me, he snapped. You're not my student, you're not my equal, you're a problem, and I don't tolerate problems. A few people in the crowd laughed. Amara's body trembled. She wanted to turn and run, but her mother's voice echoed in her head. You belong in every space your mind can reach. She forced herself to stand tall. I'm not a problem, she said, voice breaking. I'm a person. Whitman's face contorted with disgust. A person, he repeated as if tasting the word and finding it bitter. A person who can't even afford basic health care, a person who thinks she can be an engineer when she can barely afford a bus ride? Amara's eyes filled with tears. She looked at the crowd. No one moved, no one spoke. The silence pressed down on her like a physical weight. Her mind raced. Why isn't anyone helping me? Whitman's voice rose again, louder, more public. You should go back to where you came from, he said. Maybe then you'll understand your place. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered, that's not right. But no one stepped forward, no one stopped him. The stranger beside her finally spoke, softly, calmly. Mr. Whitman, he said. Whitman turned, annoyed. Who are you? He snapped. And why are you speaking to me like that? The stranger's voice was quiet but carried an undeniable authority. You will not speak to her that way. Whitman's lips curled into a smile. Oh, really? He said. And what are you going to do about it? The stranger didn't respond immediately. He simply looked at Amara, then at the crowd, then back at Mr. Whitman. His calm presence was like a hand on a burning stove, stillness in the middle of chaos. Whitman leaned closer to Amara, his voice sharp enough to cut. You think this man will save you? He sneered. He's just another donor. Another rich man who likes to feel important. The crowd chuckled. Amara's heart broke because she realized something terrifying. The world didn't see her as a human being. They saw her as a story, a spectacle, a lesson, and they were all watching to see if she would crumble. Amara tried to speak, but her voice failed her. She blinked hard, fighting back tears. The stranger's gaze stayed on her, steady, compassionate. Then slowly he stepped forward, not aggressive, not dramatic, just firm. His voice cut through the silence. Stop! The word landed like a thunderclap. Mr. Whitman froze. The crowd turned. Everyone's eyes were on them now. And for the first time since the humiliation began, Amara felt something shift. Because the stranger wasn't just standing beside her. He was standing for her. And the moment he spoke, something in the air changed. The confrontation wasn't just between Amara and Mr. Whitman anymore. It was between injustice and truth. And the truth was about to hit harder than anyone expected. The stranger's single word, stop, hung in the air like a challenge. For a moment, the hallway went still. The crowd held its breath. Mr. Whitman's eyes narrowed. He was not used to being interrupted. He was not used to being challenged. He was not used to being questioned in front of an audience. And he certainly was not used to being told what to do by someone he didn't recognize. You don't tell me what to do, Whitman snapped, his voice rising again. Who do you think you are? The stranger's calm didn't waver. He took one step closer. His gaze remained fixed on Whitman, unblinking, unafraid. I'm someone who believes that dignity isn't optional, he said softly. And I'm someone who will not allow you to humiliate a young woman in public. Whitman scoffed as if the words were meaningless. Dignity. he repeated, voice thick with sarcasm. This is a scholarship review. Not a sermon, the crowd murmured. Amara's stomach turned. She could feel the pressure building inside her chest like she was drowning in a room full of people. Whitman leaned in again, closer than necessary. Listen, he said, his tone dangerously cold. You don't know me, you don't know what I've done for this school, you don't know what I've built. The stranger's expression stayed calm, but his voice sharpened. Then maybe you should, he replied, because you're about to find out. Whitman's face twisted into a sneer. Who are you? He demanded. The stranger didn't answer right away. He looked at Amara, his eyes holding hers with a quiet intensity. And in that moment, Amara felt something she hadn't felt all day. Not hope, not relief, but recognition, like the stranger's presence wasn't random, like he had been there for her long before this moment. Whitman noticed the pause. His confidence surged. Oh, so you're playing games, he said. This is a stunt, isn't it? Another drama for the cameras. Amara's heart pounded so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come, because the truth was too heavy, because she was too ashamed, because she was terrified of what would happen next. And then Whitman spoke again, loudly, cruelly, and with total certainty. You're nothing, he said to Amara. A desperate girl begging for help, a woman who should have known her place. You think your dreams matter. They don't. The words hit her like a physical blow. Her knees buckled. Her vision blurred. A sob rose in her throat. She tried to swallow it back, but it escaped anyway. The sound was small, fragile, and then like a cruel orchestra, everyone around her reacted, not with comfort, not with sympathy, but with silence. The crowd didn't gasp. They didn't protest. They didn't move. They just watched. And the silence felt heavier than the insults. Amara's face burned. She looked around desperately, as if searching for someone, anyone to stand with her, but the crowd remained still. Phones were raised, whispers were shared, eyes were turned. Some faces showed pity, most showed indifference, a few showed amusement. And the worst part, no one reached for her. No one offered their hand, no one said a word, because watching was easier than acting, because the world had taught them that justice was not their responsibility. Amara's body shook. She felt like she was falling apart. Her breathing became shallow, her hands trembled. She clutched her folder so tightly the paper creased under her grip. She didn't know what to do, she didn't know where to go, she didn't know how to survive the moment. She felt like she had been stripped of everything, her pride, her hope, her dignity. Her mother's face flashed in her mind, pale and trembling in the dim apartment, clutching her chest. Amara's tears spilled freely now. She tried to speak, but her voice broke. I'm sorry, she whispered, barely audible. The words were not for Whitman, they were for herself, for daring to hope, for daring to ask, for daring to believe she could belong. Whitman's expression hardened as if her apology confirmed his superiority. See, he said loudly, addressing the crowd. She knows she's out of her league. A few people laughed again. The sound of their laughter was like a knife. Amara's legs gave out. She sank to the floor. The hallway blurred. The air felt thick. Her breathing became ragged. She pressed her palm against her chest as if she could hold herself together physically. She wanted to leave. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to crawl into a hole and never come out. But she couldn't, because her mother was waiting, because her mother's life depended on her, because she had already come this far, and because, even in her brokenness, a small flame of hope still flickered inside her. She looked up at the stranger again, his face still calm, still watching. And she realized something terrifying. She was alone, but she wasn't completely alone. The stranger was there. But she didn't know who he was, she didn't know what he wanted, she didn't know if he would save her. All she knew was that the humiliation had reached its peak, and she was standing on the edge of surrender. Her heart felt like it was breaking, and for the first time all day, she truly believed she had lost everything. Because in that moment, when no one defended her, when the silence was louder than the insults, Amara finally understood the cruel truth. Sometimes the world doesn't just hurt you with words. Sometimes it hurts you by refusing to speak at all. Amara's chest heaved as she sat on the cold floor, trembling. Her eyes were swollen from tears, her face flushed, her body aching from humiliation. She had expected cruelty, yes, but she hadn't expected the world to be quiet about it. The silence felt like a punishment, and then, like a sudden gust of wind that breaks through a closed window, the calm presence beside her shifted. The stranger stepped closer. He knelt down, not too close, not too far, as if giving her space while still showing he was there. His voice was soft, almost gentle. Are you okay? He asked again. Amara looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and confusion. I don't know, she whispered. The stranger nodded as if he understood more than she could say. Listen to me, he said. You don't have to apologize for being here. Amara's lips trembled. But she began, gesturing weakly toward Whitman, who was still standing, watching her with a satisfied smirk. He's wrong, the stranger said, cutting her off. And you know it. Amara blinked, unsure whether to believe him. The stranger turned his head toward the crowd. Why is everyone just watching? A few people shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke. The stranger looked back at Amara, his eyes full of quiet compassion. I'm going to ask you something, he said, and I want you to answer me honestly. Amara nodded, her voice barely audible. Are you afraid? Yes, she admitted. I'm afraid of being laughed at, of being judged, of being dismissed. The stranger's expression softened. That fear is normal, he said, but it doesn't define you. Amara's throat tightened. She didn't know how to respond, because she had never heard anyone say something so human to her in a place like this. Most people didn't see her as human. Most people saw her as a problem, or a story, or a joke. But this man, this stranger, looked at her like she was a person with a soul, and that terrified her because she didn't know what he wanted. He stood up slowly, as if preparing to face a storm. Then he turned toward Whitman. His voice became firm. Mr. Whitman, he said. Whitman's eyes narrowed. Yes. The stranger spoke clearly, loudly, with authority that cut through the hallway like a knife. Your behavior is unacceptable. Whitman laughed. And who are you to say that? The stranger didn't answer right away. He looked at the people gathered around them. He looked at their faces. He looked at their phones. He looked at their silence. Then he looked back at Whitman. And he spoke again with a calmness that made his words even more powerful. I am someone who has watched you treat people like they don't matter, he said. And I'm someone who won't allow it to continue. Whitman's face tightened. Are you threatening me? He demanded. The stranger's eyes didn't move. I'm telling you the truth, he replied. Whitman scoffed. You don't have the authority to tell me anything. The stranger's voice remained steady. Maybe not, he said, but I do have the authority to stop you. Amara's heart raced. Her mind spun. Who is he, she thought. Why is he protecting me? Whitman stepped forward, his voice rising again. You think you can just walk in here and interrupt my work? Who are you? A donor, a benefactor? The stranger's gaze remained unwavering. I am not here to be praised, he said. I am here to make sure justice is served. Whitman's eyes flashed with anger. Justice, he repeated, sneering. You don't even know what justice is. The stranger's expression remained calm. I do, he said, and you are about to learn what it looks like. Whitman's smirk faded. He looked uncertain, like he was suddenly unsure of himself. The crowd shifted, sensing the change in the air. The people who had been watching with curiosity now watched with tension, because something about this man felt different. He didn't look like the other wealthy people Amara had seen. He didn't look like someone who wanted to feel important. He looked like someone who had power and didn't need to prove it. Whitman took a step back. He glanced at the people around him. His confidence was fading. The stranger's calm presence had shifted the balance of power. And for the first time since the confrontation began, Amara felt a spark of hope. Not because she knew what would happen next, but because she realized she wasn't completely alone. The stranger's eyes met hers again, and in that moment Amara felt something she hadn't felt all day, not humiliation, not fear, but protection, like someone was finally standing between her and the world. And in the silence that followed, the stranger took one more step forward, preparing to reveal the truth that would change everything. The hallway felt heavier now, not because of the crowd, but because of the truth that was about to be revealed. Mr. Whitman's smug confidence had vanished. His sneer was replaced by a sudden, uneasy awareness. The stranger stood tall, calm, and unwavering, like a man who had walked into a room knowing he would be listened to. Whitman's voice trembled with irritation and fear. Who are you? He demanded again, as if the question would protect him. The stranger took a slow breath. He looked at Amara once more, and this time his eyes carried a deeper meaning, like he wasn't just protecting her, but remembering her. Then he turned back to Whitman and spoke. My name is Elliot Mercer. The name didn't mean anything to Amara at first, but the reaction from the crowd was immediate. A hush fell, whispers spread like wildfire, people shifted, startled. Some faces turned pale. Others stared in disbelief. Elliot Mercer, the billionaire donor, the man whose name was spoken in hushed tones around fundraising dinners and corporate boardrooms, the man whose donations had built this school's newest science wing, the man whose influence had shaped the future of countless students, the man who everyone believed was untouchable, and now he stood before them, speaking her name with calm certainty. Whitman's face drained of color. You, he stammered. You're Elliot Mercer. Yes, Elliot replied, his voice steady. The crowd leaned in. Amara's heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. She looked at Elliot, stunned. She didn't know how he knew her name. She didn't know how he knew her story. But the moment he spoke it, something in her chest lifted because she realized the truth. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't a random act of kindness. This was something else, something bigger. Elliot took a step closer to Whitman. His voice sharpened, but he didn't raise it. "I am the primary donor for this scholarship program," he said, "and I will not allow my money to be used to punish students for their background." Whitman swallowed hard. "You can't just," he began. Elliot interrupted him. "I can," he said calmly, "because I built this program, I fund it, and I decide how it is run." The crowd gasped. Someone whispered, "He can fire him." Another person said, "Oh my God." Whitman's voice turned desperate. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said, trying to regain control. "I am the head of the Academic Review Board. I have authority." Elliot's eyes narrowed. "And I have the authority to remove you," he replied. "Immediately." Whitman's face twisted. "You can't just—" Elliot raised his hand slightly, cutting him off. "You're done," he said simply. The words landed like a verdict. A sudden silence fell over the hallway. The crowd's attention shifted from the drama to the reality of what was happening. This wasn't just a confrontation. This was a judgment. Whitman's confidence collapsed. He stared at Elliot, stunned. He looked around at the crowd as if searching for support, but no one moved, no one defended him. The people who had laughed moments ago now watched in shock. The same people who had stood silently as Amara was humiliated now realized they had witnessed something much bigger. They had watched a man abuse his power in front of a room full of witnesses. And now the truth was being exposed. Whitman's voice cracked. "Who are you?" he demanded again, but this time it sounded like a plea. Elliot stepped forward. He spoke with a quiet intensity that made the room feel smaller. "I'm the man who has been mentoring Amara for years," he said. The crowd's breath caught. Amara froze. Her mind flashed back to the first time she met Elliot at a community science workshop, the way he had listened, the way he had encouraged her, the way he had believed in her when no one else did. Her mentor, the man who had given her the courage to dream, and now he was standing in front of her, revealing his identity. Whitman's face went white. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Mentoring her," he scoffed. "You, why would you?" Elliot's voice grew firm. "Because she is brilliant," he said. "Because she has the kind of mind that changes the world, because she deserves the opportunity." The crowd murmured, stunned. Amara's eyes filled with tears. She couldn't speak, she couldn't move. She just stared at Elliot, unable to believe what was happening. Whitman tried to speak again, but Elliot wasn't finished. He looked directly at Amara. "Amara," he said softly, "stand up." She stood slowly, trembling. Elliot turned to the crowd. "Everyone here witnessed this," he said. "You saw how this man treated her. You saw the humiliation. You saw the silence." He paused. Then he looked back at Whitman. "And you will remember this moment," he said. "Because I am removing you from your position, effective immediately." Whitman's mouth opened. He tried to argue, but the authority in Elliot's voice made his words meaningless. The crowd's silence turned into a low, stunned murmur. The students and parents looked at each other, shocked. Some faces held shame, others held disbelief. No one could believe what had just happened. Elliot turned to Amara once more. "And now," he said, "let's talk about you." Amara's voice shook as she whispered, "I don't understand." Elliot's eyes softened. "You will," he said, "soon." And with that, the auditorium doors behind them seemed to open wider, not just physically, but metaphorically, because the world had changed in that hallway, and Amara's life was about to be rewritten. The crowd watched in silence, stunned and powerless, as the billionaire donor revealed the truth that would change everything. And the moment felt like a turning point, like the beginning of a new life, because now the world knew who Amara truly was. And the man who had tried to crush her was finally exposed. The hallway was silent, but it wasn't the same silence as before. It wasn't the silence of cruelty. It was the silence of shock. The kind that happens when someone realizes they've been watching an injustice and suddenly understand they were part of it. Mr. Whitman stood frozen, his face a mixture of anger and fear. He looked like a man who had just realized his power had been taken away, like the ground had been pulled out from beneath him. Elliot Mercer did not look angry. He looked disappointed. His eyes softened when he turned back to Amara. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice gentle. Amara's lips trembled. I don't know," she admitted. Elliot nodded slowly as if he understood the depth of her pain. Then he spoke again, addressing the crowd. "I want to make something very clear," he said. "This institution was built to create opportunity, not to crush dreams. If anyone here thinks it is acceptable to humiliate a student publicly, especially based on background or skin color, then you are on the wrong side of history." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some people nodded, some looked away, some whispered, "He's right." Elliot turned toward the doors leading into the auditorium. I will be taking this matter directly to the board, he said, and I will ensure that the school's policies are rewritten. No student will ever be treated like this again. Mr. Whitman's voice rose, desperate and trembling. You can't do that. I've been here for years. I'm respected. You don't understand how this works. Elliot's eyes hardened. I understand exactly how it works, he replied. You treat students like objects. You think your authority is untouchable, but you forgot one thing. He stepped closer. You forgot that the people you judge have names, they have dreams, they have families, and you will be held accountable. Whitman's shoulders sagged. The smirk was gone. His confidence was broken. A security guard stepped forward, but he hesitated, unsure. Elliot looked at him calmly. Please escort Mr. Whitman to the administrative office, he said. We will discuss his future there. The guard nodded, eyes wide, and motioned for Whitman to follow. As Whitman was escorted away, the crowd's energy shifted. The students who had been recording began lowering their phones. The parents began whispering, their faces filled with guilt and shame. Even the faculty members who had watched quietly now looked shaken. Amara sat on the floor for a moment, still processing what had just happened. Her body felt numb. Her mind felt like it was moving too fast. Elliot knelt beside her again, careful and calm. You didn't deserve that, he said. Amara shook her head, tears spilled down her cheeks again. I didn't ask for this, she whispered. I just needed help. Elliot reached out and gently took her hand. You didn't ask for humiliation, he said softly. You asked for help, and help is what you will get. Amara looked up, her eyes wide with disbelief. What are you going to do? She asked. Elliot's voice became firm but kind. I'm going to make sure you and your family are safe, he said, and I'm going to make sure you get everything you need to build the life you deserve. Amara's mouth fell open. Everything, she repeated, as if the word itself was too big to understand. Elliot nodded. Everything, he confirmed, starting with medical care for your mother. Amara's breath hitched. You can do that? She asked, voice trembling. Elliot smiled gently. I can, he said, and I will. He stood and motioned toward the doors. Come with me, he said. We'll go to my office. You need to sit down and you need to eat something. Amara stared at him. Why are you doing this? She asked, voice barely audible. You don't even know me. Elliot's eyes softened. I've known you longer than you think, he replied. Amara blinked. He continued. I met you years ago at a community workshop, he said. You were the only one who stayed after everyone else left. You asked questions. You stayed curious. You were hungry for knowledge. Amara's eyes widened as the memory surfaced. I didn't know, she whispered. Elliot nodded. I knew then that you had something special, he said, and I promised myself I would help you when the time was right. Amara's lips trembled. She couldn't speak. Elliot continued. And now, he said, the time is right. They walked through the hallway toward the elevator. The crowd watched them pass, their eyes filled with a mix of awe and regret. Once they reached the elevator, Elliot pressed the button. The doors closed, and for the first time all day, Amara felt a sense of relief, not because the humiliation was over, but because the pain had finally been met with compassion. Inside the elevator, Elliot turned to her. I want you to know something, he said. I'm not doing this because I feel sorry for you. I'm doing this because you are brilliant, you are capable, and you deserve a future. Amara swallowed hard. Thank you, she whispered, her voice cracking. Elliot nodded. You're welcome, he said, and I want you to promise me something. Amara looked up. What? She asked. Promise me you will never let anyone convince you that you're not worthy, Elliot said. Not because of your background. Not because of your circumstances. Not because of someone else's ignorance. Amara's eyes filled with tears. I promise, she said. Elliot nodded, satisfied. When the elevator doors opened, they stepped into a private office. It was spacious, warm, and elegant. The kind of office that made people feel small, except that Amara didn't feel small anymore. Elliot motioned for her to sit. Your mother will be taken care of, he said. You will have medical support, housing assistance, and access to the best education resources. Amara's voice shook. What about the scholarship? Elliot smiled. You won't need to worry about that anymore, he said. You will have a full scholarship and a mentor program designed specifically for you. Amara's eyes widened. You mean you're going to support me? Elliot nodded. Yes, he said, because I believe in you. Amara looked down at her hands, unable to believe what she was hearing. She had spent her entire life fighting for survival, and now someone was offering her a life, a real life, a future, a chance to breathe. She looked up at Elliot again, tears streaming down her face. I don't know how to thank you, she whispered. Elliot's voice was gentle. You don't need to, he said. Just promise me one thing. Amara nodded. Promise me you'll use this opportunity to lift others up, he said. Amara's voice trembled. I promise. Elliot smiled, and for the first time all day, Amara felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, hope. And as they stood together in that office, the world outside felt a little less cruel. Because for the first time, justice had arrived, and compassion had won. 3 years later, the world looked different, not because the world had changed completely, because it hadn't, but because Amara had. The morning sun poured through the windows of a bright, spacious apartment. The air smelled faintly of coffee and fresh flowers, the kind of home that didn't feel like a temporary shelter or a borrowed space. Amara stood at the kitchen counter, flipping pancakes with a calm, confident grace. She wore a simple blouse and jeans, but she moved like someone who belonged in the room. Her mother, Ruth, sat at the table, her hair thicker and her skin brighter. The illness that once consumed her had been managed, treated, and cared for. She was alive, truly alive, in a way Amara had never thought possible. "More pancakes?" Amara asked, smiling. Ruth's eyes glistened. "You know I'm always hungry." Amara laughed softly, and the sound was warm. It was a sound that didn't come from fear. It came from peace. The apartment was filled with reminders of how far they'd come, framed certificates on the wall, a small model rocket on a shelf, and a photograph of Amara in her graduation gown. On the living room couch sat a stack of books, engineering textbooks, research journals, and a notebook with notes written in Amara's neat handwriting. She had been accepted into a top engineering program and was now working on her master's degree in aerospace engineering. A knock sounded at the door. Amara wiped her hands and opened it. Standing there was a young girl, maybe 12, holding a folder and looking nervous. "Hi," the girl said, voice trembling. I'm here for the mentorship program." Amara's smile softened. "Come in," she said warmly. "You're safe here." The girl stepped inside, eyes wide as she looked around. "This place is beautiful," she whispered. Amara's heart tightened. She remembered the day she stood in a hallway, humiliated and broken, with no one to defend her. Now she was the one opening doors. The girl sat at the kitchen table, clutching her folder. "I heard about you," she said. "You were brave." Amara's eyes softened. "Bravery isn't always loud," she said gently. "Sometimes it's just showing up." The girl nodded slowly. Amara leaned forward. "What's your name?" she asked. "Jada," the girl replied. Amara's smile grew. "Jada," she repeated like the name itself was a promise. Jada looked down at her folder. "I want to be an engineer," she said quietly, "but people keep telling me I'm not smart enough." Amara's heart clenched. She recognized the fear in Jada's eyes. She had been there. She took a deep breath. "Listen to me," Amara said, voice steady. "You are smart enough. You belong in every room your mind can reach, and I'm going to help you get there." Jada's eyes filled with tears. "Really?" she whispered. Amara nodded. "Really," she said. Later that day, Amara sat at her desk, writing a letter to the scholarship program. She had become one of the program's strongest advocates, ensuring that students from all backgrounds had a fair chance to be seen. Her phone buzzed, a message from Elliot Mercer. "Proud of you, Amara." She smiled and typed back. "Thank you for everything." She paused, then added, "I promise I'll keep paying it forward." Elliot's response came quickly, "I know you will." Amara put the phone down and looked out the window. The city below was bustling, full of people moving through their lives. Some of them would never know the story behind her success. Some would never understand the pain she endured, but she did. And she used that pain to fuel her purpose. She had become more than a survivor. She had become a leader, a mentor. A symbol of what happens when someone refuses to let cruelty define their life. In the evening, Amara and her mother sat on the couch watching the news. A segment played about a school board meeting where new policies had been enacted, policies that protected students from discrimination and required training for faculty to prevent abuse of power. Amara's eyes softened. That was the world she had helped change. Ruth reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand. "You did it," she whispered. Amara smiled, her eyes shining. "No," she corrected gently. "We did it." And in that moment, she understood something she hadn't fully understood in the hallway years ago. The world may be cruel, but the world can also be changed. Not by one person alone, but by people who choose compassion over judgment, people who choose to stand up, people who choose to believe in someone when the world refuses to. Moral: never judge someone based on their background or circumstances. Kindness and compassion can change a life, and sometimes they can change the world. If this story moved you, please like this video, share it with friends and family, and subscribe for more powerful, emotional stories that remind us of the strength of the human spirit.